Good evening. Is that right? No. Good morrow. I mean, that's a thing, but I mean, we're not in like the medieval times or whatever. What's going on, internet? It's Sam Nashry and the Whiskey Somm here. I'm really excited to be talking about one of my favorite Isla Scotch whiskies today, with none other than U.S. brand ambassador and son of the founder. Actually, this is a real treat. We get one of the family members, the son of the founder. We have Mr. James Wills from Kilchoman joining us today. James, can you hear me okay?
I can hear you just fine. Yeah, can you hear me?
I can hear you perfectly fine. Welcome, welcome, welcome to Spirited James. I'm so excited to have you dialing in all the way from Scotland.
Yeah, no, it's good to be here. Good to be here. I'm getting very used to these kind of events now. Sadly, normally I'd be able to escape the Scottish winter, but for sunnier climes like in California. But I'm stuck here, but not with the worst company in the world, I'm sure.
And also a hello to our viewers. Remember, guys, this is live and we can interact with you. So leave your comments on the YouTube screen, and I will highlight them and answer them as we go. Comments and questions are encouraged. So today we're tasting 6 fantastic Isla single malt scotches. Now, one of the cool things about Kilchoman, and I'm going to ask James for you to dive into this in a few moments, is that they're Isla's only farm distillery. So everything is grown, harvested, distilled, bottled, barreled, etc., on Isla. Tell us a little about that, would you please?
Yeah, so I mean, we're a relatively new distillery compared to most in Scotland. My father built Kilchoman in 2005, and the whole idea was to kind of mirror how Scotch whisky was produced on Isla before it was commercialized in some ways, where there wasn't a lot of trade with the mainland, and so the distillers relied on locally grown barley and completed the whole process themselves. So we grow barley ourselves, we floor malt it, we distill it, mature it, and bottle on site, and we're the only people to do that.
Real quick, I'm going to jump in here for a second. Sorry. You floor malt it. That's not something many people do anymore. Yeah. So can you explain a little bit for the viewers about floor malting versus the other, processes?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not that experienced in terms of the other processes, but floor malting is the traditional way of malting barley. The barley comes off the fields in the summer, when we harvest it. It will be dried. This is sort of a part of the process that everyone goes through, so the farmers will dry it or sell it to malting houses that will then dry it. And then the malting houses or us, we will use that barley in smaller batches. So at Kilchoman, we use 4-ton batches. We soak it in water in like a big bath vat, and then we lay it on the floor and we turn it by hand to regulate the growth. Because effectively, once you bathe it in water, the barley starts to grow, and you need to regulate that growth. So to regulate the growth across the whole batch, we turn it by hand. And as I said, this is a very traditional way of doing it. It's much more labor intensive than other ways of doing it, but it means we have complete control. We're more flexible in terms of the batches. We can, the size of the batches, how they're handled. And the alternatives are more kind of, as I say, commercial. The alternative, the malting house on Isla, they will do maybe, 40, 50-ton batches. I'm not sure exactly, but a lot bigger than what we do. And they'll do it in a drum. So instead of turning it while it's on the floor by hand, this enormous drum will be turning, and that is what's regulating the growth. And then, similar kind of size of equipment will then smoke it and dry it as well. So it's floor malting is just a very traditional way.
Sorry, I'm still hung up on that. I thought when you said 4 tons, that was a lot, and 40 to 50 tons. I mean, obviously they're giant batches when you're producing, more commercial level grade of, Scotch whiskey, like you were saying before things were really more commercialized. But still, just trying to picture 4 tons versus 40 tons versus, who even knows what is this boggling my mind a little bit.
Yeah. Well, a tractor, a trailer on a tractor will carry, probably about 8 or 10 tons. So, and a, articulated lorry that will carry about 20 tons. So think of 2 lorry loads, and that's about what 40 tons would be.
Gotcha. So let's dive into the whiskey in front of us, shall we?
Yeah.
So we're all going to start off, you guys, with their core. Really, it's the entry expression, right? The Machir Bay.
Yeah. So Machir Bay comes in the blue. Yeah, can't get to grips with the turning, but Machir Bay, yeah, is our classic kind of core expression, if you like. Yeah, it's the most widely available.
I have a bottle, actually. It's almost empty, but I've been enjoying it. That is signed by your brothers from when they were here in 2017.
Okay, it was my 2 brothers, George and Pete.
Peter, yeah.
Yeah.
It was a fun little event at the Daily Pint out in Santa Monica, which is a good account for Kilchoman.
Yeah, no, it's very, very much so, yeah. No, I missed that because my wife was giving birth, so...
That's a good reason. Also, a hello to our dear friend, Mr. Sam Filmus from Impex Beverages.
Yeah, hi, Sam.
Hello, Sam. Good to see you here. So, going up the Machir Bay now,
Yeah, so I'll tell you a bit about Machir Bay is the core expression that we produce. It's made from 50 ppm, heavily peated malted barley, and we mature it mainly in bourbon barrels, but we also use a small portion of sherry cask maturation as well.
Would you say it's about 80-20?
It's 90-10 approximately.
90-10.
Yeah. So with the bourbon barrel maturation, what we're looking to do is build out or show off the lighter, more salty side of the whiskey, and then we add a bit of sherry maturation to richen that up. So we're really looking for a classic, Isla style of whiskey. But with Kilchoman, what you've got is maybe a bit more citrus, a bit more sweetness, to balance with that salty maritime influence as well. So we kind of...
We're looking at on this now.
Sorry, say that again?
And what age are we looking at for the Machir Bay?
Well, we don't state an age, but it's around about 5 years old, 5-6 years old.
Gotcha.
So not an old whiskey by anything, but what it does have is real kind of vibrancy. So first and foremost, if you like Isla whiskies, and you like that, as I said, the salty, smoky side to a Scotch whiskey, then all of that is going to be most present in a relatively young whiskey. And also, well, not also, but typically people have maybe been put off younger whiskies because they're a little bit raw and sometimes slightly aggressive.
I like it. For an Isla whiskey, I actually prefer it younger. It's had less time to, for lack of a term, mellow out in the cask, and still got that rich, raw, punch you in the face kind of smoke, and that's what I look for usually in an Isla whiskey. And the interesting thing about the Machir Bay that I'm getting right now is this is a very meaty smoke. It's very, it's like a Pechuga, kind of like a Pechuga mezcal, or wait, are Pechuga and mezcal? I actually don't know if Pechuga is a type of mezcal or if they're different categories of agave distillate. Regardless,
you're the wrong person.
Hello to Mario Campa, and hello to Jane Albachet. I'm a whiskey nerd, not an agave nerd.
Yeah, on the sort of meaty side that you mentioned, it is very much something that runs through the Kilchoman, whiskies across our range. Sometimes it comes through as more of sort of white meat, maybe with the mainly bourbon cask maturations. When you move to a sort of sherry cask maturation, it tends to be more of a kind of barbecue sweetness that comes through, but always has that sort of slightly, I don't know what to say, but yeah, meaty character coming through.
Thank you, GX man. We really appreciate that. It turns out they are different categories, They are both agave distillate, but Pechuga is not mezcal, according to DX Man. So thank you very much. We appreciate that.
And very light. You'll see from the color, very, very light. We don't color chill filter the whiskey at all. So minimum 46% ABV for all of our bottlings. Some are higher. And yeah, we find that means you get a lot more texture on the palate, and more flavor as well.
That just gets better and better and better each release.
Yeah, as you drink it, the peat will sort of come down a bit. The more caramel vanilla character will come through. The peat is certainly the initial hit on the palate, but behind that, there's a lot of the natural citrus character that we have in our whiskies, as well as the influence from the bourbon cask, mainly the caramel, vanilla, butterscotch.
Gotcha. So it really does get better, the more I'm assuming that, the Machir Bay is now a little older than when I first tried it, and when I haven't had it particularly, in a while, and when I did have it was recently with an almost empty bottle, and it was from an older release back in 2017, 2016. So I'm assuming it's now a little older than in this release than it was, back then.
Yeah, I mean, we're moving the age on as much as our stocks allow, because the big obstacle when you build a distillery is that you have to build up your stocks, and for every bottle for every liter of liquid you put into a bottle, that's a liter that you don't have in the warehouse to bottle, in future years. So the big challenge is to kind of grow the brand and introduce Kilchoman to new people, but not exhaust our stocks so that we don't have a bottle in the future.
It's just, there's a beautiful meaty, peppery smoke to this that, I'm really, really enjoying.
Yeah. It pairs really well with, shellfish, as well as stuff like, bacon, but then also like milk chocolate with lime through it. We've just recently worked with a chocolate.
Milk chocolate with lime?
Yeah, so chocolate, lime, and sea salt. These guys called Cocoa Chocolatiers they're based in Edinburgh, and they produce this chocolate with sea, Atlantic sea salt, so the ocean that's just next to Kilchoman. And then also the chocolate, firstly, the richness of the chocolate works with the sort of peatiness to a large extent. And then the citrus in Kilchoman works with that lime, and the saltiness, with the maritime influence from the whiskey. So it pairs well.
I gotta try that. That sounds amazing.
Yeah, no, it's good. It was very good.
It'll be a little hard to get it, but I'll see what I can do.
I'll send them over to Sam. If he doesn't eat it all, he might find a way of getting you a bar.
A further explanation on Pechuga. It's more of a subcategory. It's like, a second. They just kind of do a second distillation, is what he's saying. Very cool. Thank you. We appreciate that. So let's move on to the Saneg. Saneg?
Saneg, yeah. We're not too fussy. Most Scottish people would say, when they saw Kilchoman, they would say Kilchoman. That would be the natural pronunciation for a Scottish person. But the nuances of different regions of Scotland and how they pronounce things just means that no one can explain it, but we say Kilchoman. Who knows why? No explanation needed.
My father has recently been purchasing pork rinds, and he's been calling them chicharrones. And I'm like, no, Dad, it's chicharron. Not chicharron and not chicharron. It's chicharron.
Yeah.
Mario wants to know who got the chocolate.
Who got the chocolate? Well, we've got about 4,000 bars of chocolate coming, and they're specifically paired. So the one that we paired with Machir Bay is the milk chocolate with lime and Atlantic sea salt, and then we've got like a dark chocolate. I can't remember exactly what it is, but it's like haggis and something spice that's paired with the Sane.
Okay. Haggis chocolate is a thing now, apparently.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't taste a lot like haggis, but it's got that. I don't know. Have you ever had haggis?
I have.
Yeah. So it's a bit like, I mean, like black pudding or something is probably the closest thing. So it has that kind of rich, sort of mixed spice, meaty character, which pairs very well with something that's peaty and matured in a sherry cask.
G-Man, we agree chocolate and Isla Scotch is a great combo.
Here, I didn't realize it would be so popular, so we'll send a whole load to you when it comes in.
Send him to Sam and he'll distribute them to the rest of us.
Yeah. But Sane, yeah, so I'll tell you a bit about this. So this is basically the sister whiskey to Machir Bay. So Machir Bay is mainly matured in sherry casks. Sorry, Machir Bay is mainly matured in bourbon casks. That was the one we tasted first. And then Sane is kind of the opposite. It's also a combination of bourbon and sherry casks, but it's mainly matured in those sherry casks as opposed to the bourbons. So you can see from the color, much darker in color from the sherry cask, and immediately you get a completely different character on the nose. More mellow in some ways, more fruity, more rich.
More fruity, yeah.
And all of that color is purely coming from the Oloroso sherry casks. We use Buffalo Trace bourbon barrels exclusively for any of our bourbon barrel maturation. And then the sherry casks come from a producer in Spain called Miguel Martin, and we've worked with him for a long time. He supplies us. He supplies quite a lot of the smaller producers. His probably the most famous sherry whiskey that he supplies is Glenfarclas. So
wow,
he's supplying them, and we work quite closely with him. And you can see, this is a similar age whiskey to Machir Bay. It's a little bit older, but not significantly. And you can see the color on it is spectacular.
Because you mentioned color, so thank you for that segue. I want to talk about the color of your whiskeys and how often you're reusing the barrels. How many times do you use that ex-bourbon, that sherry barrel?
Well, for these two, we're only using them, the first time. The first time we use them, that whiskey will be, intended to be bottled as Machir Bay, Sane, or something that's probably under 10 years old. We will use that barrel a second time, but we probably will bottle it as an older whiskey, so 10-year-old plus. And we haven't really got to the point where we have had to think about filling those barrels for a third time. We might do, but it's probably unlikely. We'll probably only use the cask twice.
Gotcha. All right. And now let's move on to the 100% Isla. Talk to us about this one, because this is a really interesting release, and it's getting a lot of praise.
Yeah, so the 100% Isla is the range within our whiskies, which is produced from the barley that we grow ourselves. So the others are actually produced from barley that we buy in. The 100% Isla is wholly made from the barley we grow. So this is the 10th edition. We release one edition every year, and so this is produced from our 2007, 2009, and 2010 barley harvests. It's a 9-year-old bottling. It's about 39 bourbon barrels, 2 Oloroso sherry casks, and it's produced from 2 barley varieties, Optic and Publican. And yeah, as I say, 9 years old, mainly bourbon cask matured, but a bit of sherry cask influence. And we bottle it at a slightly higher strength, 50 ABV. and the character is. Oh, have I lost him?
Are we back?
I don't know how much of that you heard or didn't hear. Was it me or you?
I think it was me.
Yeah. Anyway, so the 100% Isla, mainly bourbon cask, bit of sherry, but it's like the peating level. That's the key difference.
Sorry about that.
Yeah.
Oof, I gotta check my internet when this is all over. That's not the first time it's happened recently.
Yeah. So lighter, more floral. The peat smoke doesn't. The less peat smoke that we use means that we have less of the kind of earthy maritime influence and more of the kind of malty character coming through. The more of the citrus, it's much more floral, fresh, fragrant. It's almost perfumed.
Gotcha. Now, talking about the name a little bit, 100% Isla, because all your whiskey is 100% Isla, so there's a disconnect in my head there.
Not really, because the 100% Isla is made from the barley we grow ourselves.
Okay.
Whereas the rest of the range is produced from barley that we buy in. It's grown on the mainland and then malted on Ireland. Yeah.
Okay, I didn't realize it. I thought everything was 100% your guys' barley.
No. We can only grow about 200 tons of barley on the farm, so we're limited by the ground that we have. Gotcha. We can't grow any more barley, so we have to. Well, if we want to, expand our horizons a bit, then we have to buy in the balance of the barley. So the heavier peated barley that goes into producing Machir Bay and Saneg and some of the other whiskies, most of the other whiskies, that's a heavily peated malted barley that we buy, grown on the mainland, shipped to Isla, peated on the malted at the Port Ellen maltings, and then we buy it. The 100% Isla is from the barley we grow ourselves, harvest ourselves, malt ourselves, and then take through the process from there.
Ooh, I'm enjoying this.
Yeah, it's very, very. The word to describe it to me is fragrant. It's got a very Machir Bay, Saneg are kind of coastally styles of whiskey, earthy, salty, citrusy. These are the 100% Islas are just a slightly different animal. They have a bit of peat smoke, but really only a very, very faint bit, and that allows for the other characters within the whiskey to shine through.
This has really got a floral, fragrant nose, and it feels like it's got a kind of a creamy, viscous aroma.
Yeah. And there's and on the palate as well, it tends to be slightly oilier. And we distill individual barley varieties as well. So we have done recently. So this is a combination of two barley varieties, but now we are actually producing single variety, single malt, if you like. So we're distilling single barley varieties and then maturing, and eventually we will bottle them as individual barley varieties.
That's waking up the salivary glands. Ooh.
A little bit high strength.
I want to give a quick shout out to Mario, whose photo I'm still using for the background. We're still talking about Isla whiskey. So thank you, Mario, for the photo. We used it last week on our tasting of Tasting the Rares, and we're using it again this week.
It's a good photo.
It's a great photo.
Yeah, so I was just saying the slightly higher ABV just really pushes it through on the finish as well. So you kind of, whenever you use a bit of sherry cask maturation, it can sort of dry up the finish a bit. Whereas even though we have got a bit of sherry cask maturation with this expression of 100% Isla, that higher ABV and the fact that it is this really, really floral, fragrant style just means that finish just is kind of silky smooth. It goes on for.
What's the ABV on this one? I don't have that in front of me.
The what, sorry?
I don't have the ABV on this in front of me.
This is 50% ABV.
50%. Ooh, fun.
Yeah, so We edged
Which
it up a
of
bit.
these so far has been your favorite, and which 100% Isla has been your favorite?
So which of these, the three that we've tasted, is my favorite, and which 100% Isla is my favorite? Is that the question?
Correct.
So for me, my favorite of or the whiskey that I will drink 9 times out of 10 when I'm pouring myself a dram at home is Machir Bay. It's to me it has everything that you want from an Isla whiskey, and yet it's unique in itself. So just the balance of characters that are there, and yet I can still taste that real Kilchoman uniqueness, that balance between the peat smoke and the citrus. That Machir Bay is my favorite most of the time. And
it's a delicious pour.
And then in terms of the 100% Islas, I mean, any of the more recent ones, to be honest. I think some of the earlier 100% Islas, they took a little bit longer to come good, in my opinion. My father would probably beat me over the head with a stick if he heard me saying it. But I think some of them were.
Well, we'll send him this part of the video.
Yeah, when they were 5, 6, 7 years old, I just felt they needed a little bit longer. Because they didn't have the real sort of grounding of the peat smoke. So as they've now moved on and they're 9, 10 years old, I feel they're really, really coming good now. They're much more refined. There was still a sort of slightly grassy note with some of the earlier releases, and they were a little bit thin on the palate. Whereas now, I think you've got this lovely, developed, complex, balanced style, which is really come into its own.
So we're at the halfway point on whiskeys right now. So let's take a pause on the whiskey and talk about you and your background. So obviously, James Wills, family name, people who know the name Wills, know that you are working with your father and your brothers on Kilchoman. How did you get started working in the family business of whiskey, and was it something you wanted to do, or did it kind of just, happen?
Well, Molly, you might be able to tell from my accent that I'm not a sort of native Scot, really. My father is an Englishman. My mum is Scottish. Her family have been on Isla for, I think, about 4 or 5 generations. And my father always worked in wine, and then he kind of transitioned into whiskey when we moved up to Scotland. And I knew nothing about making whiskey or distilling until he sat us down and said that we were moving to Isla full time, and that he was going to build a distillery. And I was about I was probably about 17 at the time, and the first time you go to a distillery, if that's your thing, you're immediately captivated by all of this beautiful equipment and all of these people that are obviously hugely passionate about what they do. And so it was pretty much instantaneous that I was very much drawn into how whiskey was made, the characters, the flavors, all these people that kept on coming to the distillery and saying how delicious our whiskey was and things like that. So it was a mixture of all these things that I never really saw myself doing anything else long term. I have worked outside of the company, but I was always going to come back and I'd say help my dad out, but I don't think he'd see it that way. Kilchoman, I always describe Kilchoman as a dictatorship, not a democracy. So
aren't all parents like that? Of no, it's my way or the highway. No, this is my business. You work for me.
Yeah, he's slightly thick-skinned, so you just have to chip away at him. So you will never convince. I will never convince him of anything first time around. But if I bring it up 4 or 5 times in a relatively short period of time, by the time it gets to the 4th or 5th time that I mention it, maybe he's softening his stance slightly.
So what was it like growing up? So you moved to Isla, you said at 17 then?
Yeah, so I think that's about right.
So you grew up then in where? London?
No, so my family are from the southwest of England originally. So
Okay.
I was between
Typical
the age.
American. I think England. I think of England. I think of London. So forgive me. I should know better. I'm half Brit.
Yeah, basically, picture the UK. The top half is Scotland. The bottom half is England. And we were down in the southwest of England. And when I was 7, we moved up to the west coast of Scotland, but on the mainland. And then when I was about 17, we then moved over to Isla full time.
Okay, so it's a gradual transition. You know, your dad was easing you guys into it. It's like, all right, you're born in the southwest, the southern part of England. Then we're gonna move you to the western part of Scotland, so you get used to Scotland, and then bam to Isla.
Yeah, I still haven't been able to sort of shake this plummy English accent though. So that's the last thing that has to go, and then I can, claim to be a true Scot, maybe.
So, what has it been like, working on, Kilchoman? Your family, it's kind of your dad's project, but it's also kind of like a family project. It's, the family business. What's it been like, talking about Scotch whiskey pretty much every day for the last, 15 or so years?
I mean, I enjoy it. I enjoy talking about Scotch whiskey. I enjoy drinking it. So the best thing about the industry is the fact that there's lots of people all around the world that are hugely passionate about Scotch whiskey. So it's very rare that I need to convince anyone of anything. I'm not a salesman at all. I just go around, sort of give the usual spiel, tell the story about building Kilchoman and the whiskey we make, and let the whiskey do the talking.
Well, speaking of whiskey doing the talking, I've got a question for you. A story that I've been asked to tell you, or asked to have you tell us, about dumping the wrong cask into the vatting.
Yeah. So this is probably about a bottling that we called Amburach. It might be that. There have been a few mistakes. It could be one of a few mistakes, but yeah,
one of a few.
Yeah, I mean everything you can imagine to go wrong in a normal workplace. We're not immune from that at all. So things don't always go to plan, and so we've put the wrong casts in vats, and all sorts of different issues. But the good thing with Scotch whiskey is you always have the opportunity to rectify it. You can always, with a bit of imagination, a bit of experience, expertise, you can take that whiskey that maybe at one point is terrible, and remold it, mature it into something that's really good. So thankfully, the Kilchoman spirit is kind of robust enough to stand up. The peat in our spirit kind of stands up to any cast type, really. So there have been mistakes in the past, but we've managed to kind of turn them around most of the time.
On the topic of the Amburach, how did you say it again?
Amburach.
Amburach. On the topic of the Amburach, why proof it down? Why not leave it at cask? Well, I'm sorry, I know you get that question, I'm sure, all the time. I love cask strength Scotch.
Yeah. So with the case of Amburach, I'll give you the full story of it basically. So essentially, Amburach came to be. Amburach is a limited edition that we released last year, and essentially what happened was we had a vatting tank of Machir Bay, and we had a vatting tank of port matured, and someone opened up the valves between the two tanks, and overnight the tanks equalized. So the Machir Bay, the port was more full than the Machir Bay. So the port basically leveled out into the Machir Bay in the neighboring tanks. And that was a mistake. And, I don't know if I can swear, but it was a fuck up.
By all means. Swear all you fucking want.
And Burrick basically means a balls up, a cock up, a fuck up in Gaelic, in the local Scotch language. So our distillery manager just labelled the casks as Burrick on our sort of labelling system, and the name stuck. And this kind of, at that point when the casks, when the vatting tanks mixed, the whiskey wasn't good. But we filled it back into bourbon barrels. We matured it for another 5 or 6 years, I think. And then we actually finished it again in ruby port casks. And you have something which is a really, really interesting, completely unique, never to be repeated whiskey that has really captured people's imaginations. So, yes, with a bit of patience and thankfully we've got some really experienced, very capable people at the distillery to kind of put these things together.
But why not cask strength though? That's what I'm still wondering.
Yeah. So when the tanks mixed, we had port matured that was 50%, and we had the whiskies were already reduced.
Okay, you'd already proof them down. Gotcha. That's what I wasn't understanding.
Yeah. So we had something that was quite low strength anyway, and we wanted to stretch out the bottles slightly as much as we could because we only had very few bottles, and we decided to just reduce it. I think it was about 1.5% down to 46.
Gotcha. So Isla, obviously, it's a smaller island, not necessarily like a small island, but it's a smaller island. And everyone sees, whiskey brand on the shelf. They see Kilchoman, they see Bowmore, they see Laphroaig, and it's, that's competition. But I found a lot in the whiskey industry, it's not really about competition, at least, on the ground level between people, representing the whiskey. It's more, marketing that makes the competition. What is it like, on Isla, obviously working for your own distillery, and then, there's Bowmore and Laphroaig, there's, Bruichladdich.
Yeah, I think, as you say, there's a separation between, competition between brands from maybe a sales perspective in the US. The brands and the brand representatives, the salespeople will be very competitive. Across the country, they'll be saying, well, we're better than Laphroaig, and Laphroaig's no good, or maybe they're not, but there will be a sort of natural competitive feel between those brands from a sales team perspective. But on Isla, there's the total population on the island is 3,000 people, and those guys have known each other since they were, in nappies. They were in school together. They have been drinking in the pub together since they were very young. And the fact that they work at different distilleries isn't going to get in the way of that, So there is no real competitive. There's friendly competition on Isla, but really it doesn't go beyond that, and it's really not taken seriously because it's such a small, tight community. And my father, kind of being an outsider, really, even though he was married to my mum, who has a long history on the island. He was very much an outsider, yet at the beginning and even now, it's a hugely collaborative thing. Being a distiller on Isla, you can call up any of the other distilleries if you have an issue, breakdowns, short of yeast, whatever it is. They'll lend you people, they'll lend you machinery, whatever you need. It's a very much a collaborative thing.
I love that. It's community and camaraderie, which is really, whiskey is obviously, the liquid in the bottle, the liquid in our glasses, but it's more than just that. It's, the people, and it's the community and the camaraderie behind it.
Yeah, I think anyone who comes to Isla will get a feel for the sense of community that people have there. The people on Isla are hugely proud of the whiskey and what it's done for the island. So they just want to show that off, and they're not bothered about what whiskey you like, if it's theirs or if it's someone else's. They're just, they're happy that you're having a nice time on the island and that you're enjoying your whiskey.
Absolutely. And now let's move on while we're talking to the batch 3, which looks like rosé. It's so light and red in hue. It looks like I'm drinking a rosé.
Yeah, so the small batch. So this is a small batch number 3. It is. So the small batch series is a series of bottlings that we do exclusively for the US. And basically each batch is unique. It's different. We basically take a combination of bourbon and sherry maturation at 46%, and then we add maybe a Madeira cask or a port cask or a Sauterne cask, whatever it is, a sort of experimental cask type or alternative cask type. We add that to that bourbon and sherry vatting at 46%, and that creates a unique flavor and also kind of creates a slightly funky strength as well. So this is
for the small
batch 3.
Go ahead, please. I was about to ask.
Yeah, so this is batch 3, and so this has got a 50% port cask maturation. So we added 50% of the vatting is port cask maturation. About 47% is bourbon cask, and then there's about 3% sherry. So that rosé color that you're getting is from the port, the ruby port maturation that we use. And the strength is
sherry?
Oloroso sherry, fresh bourbon barrels from Buffalo Trace, and then ruby port cask, or one ruby port cask.
Now your bourbon barrels, when you're getting them, are they flat packed or are you getting them shipped whole and wet?
We only ever ship whole wet casks. They are loaded onto the containers in Kentucky, and that container comes sealed directly to our car park where we unload them. And that's a very, very important part of what we do. The barrel is the single most important part of the process. It's the biggest single contributing factor in terms of the way a whiskey tastes. I mean, that's obviously up for argument and debate, but yeah, it's very, very important. And shipping those barrels whole means you seal in all the flavor. Wet, obviously they're not going to dry out. All of that character is imparted into the whiskey that much quicker. So we ship them whole, we ship them directly to the distillery, and we fill them as soon as we can. Now,
one question I neglected to ask you already is, what does Kilchoman mean?
So Kilchoman, so Kilchoman is the parish, the church district which we sit within. The distillery is within the parish of Kilchoman, so local church sort of area. And Kilchoman there's a church, there's a ruined church which dates back to about the sort of 1400s, and you see a lot of Kilbeggan, Kilcreggan, Kilfinnan. You'll see this a lot in place names around Scotland. It basically means church or chapel. So Kilchoman, church, chapel of St. Homan. So
and who was St. Homan?
Sorry?
And who was St. Homan?
I should have done my research on this. I'm not actually sure. That's crazy. I still don't know that, isn't it? But yeah. So I mean, in Scotland, we tend to name our distilleries after local areas rather than like people or anything else.
What, you don't have the James Will Scotch Whisky Distillery?
No, my ego's getting bigger every day, but it's not that big yet.
And my other question also, what does the symbol mean? Like the iconic Kilchoman logo? Yeah,
so the Triscular. Oh, can you see it there? That swirly, I can't bloody word this thing. So yeah, that symbol, it basically is, you see it again, it's a Gaelic symbol you'll see a lot.
They can't really see on my end either. Let's pull that up.
It basically has mainly religious connotations. So Father, Son, Holy Ghost, but then also going back even further, you know, it has a lot of, you know, earth, skies, you know, sun, moon, also. Yeah, it essentially means kind of three elements coming together. And so for us, that is barley, water, yeast, you know, so the three ingredients for making Scotch whisky.
Barley, water, and yeast. I like that. I like the fact that, you know, you pay homage to that. Here we go. So that, guys, is the Kilchoman logo. So it is you call it a triskiler, James?
Yeah, I'm probably pronouncing that wrong, but it's something like that.
So obviously, you know, you have the three swirls for barley, water, and yeast, what you were saying, right?
Yeah, so they're kind of intertwined. More recently, and I say more recently, I mean in the last, you know, 500-600 years, it's mainly associated with religious stuff, whereas prior to that, it was linked to all sorts of things. But
gotcha.
It's been, you know, these Celtic symbols. There's, you know, a core of maybe 5 or 10 of them, and the Triskelo is one that's you see a lot.
Now this one I'm really looking forward to trying, the Fino Sherry Matured, the 2020 edition.
Yeah, so this is a recent limited edition, which was...
I had the Sauterne limited edition a couple of years ago, and that was delicious.
Yeah, so this is you know, Fino is a type of sherry.
Whoa.
Most of the time when you're drinking whiskey that's referencing sherry maturation, it's normally Oloroso. This probably the second most used sherry cask is Pedro Jimenez. And those are kind of, Oloroso is quite rich, slightly dry. Pedro Jimenez is sweet, whereas Fino is one of the more dry sherries.
Drier, more, you know, a little more on the savory side versus the sweet side, a little more salinic.
Yeah. Yeah. So this is much, yeah, it's not got the rich, fruity, sweet characteristics that you might associate with sherry cask maturation. It's much lighter. It's the fruity character is more of a kind of tropical fruits. Again, citrusy, malty, zesty, almost sort of creamy as well. And yeah, this is a vatting of 12 Fino sherry butts. So only 12.
It's like drinking a mixture of ash and dirt, but in a good way, of course.
Of course, yeah.
I know people look at me funny when I say that sound like, you know, off notes, but in a good way. It's because I find that the off notes are the more interesting notes of whiskey sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's quite a different style, and one that we haven't really explored much, actually. We've done a lot of wine cask maturation, whether it's, you know, Sauterne, whether it's red wine, whether it's, you know, port wine. Yet we haven't actually really explored a lot of the different sherry cask maturations. So Fino is one that we'll be doing more of. We filled recently some tequila and some mezcal casks.
Mezcal casks. Interesting.
Yeah, I think we've actually got a couple of those earmarked for the US. So I spoke to my father the other day. Actually, he said they're coming along really well, particularly the tequila casks.
When was the last time you were at the distillery?
Sorry?
When was the last time you visited Isla?
I was on Isla 2 or 3 weeks ago.
Oh, beautiful.
Yeah, we're not encouraged to travel there at the moment because the central area of Scotland, which is where I'm based, is not very good for COVID infection rates, whereas Isla is, I don't know if it's had any infections. So we have to be careful about going back there. But
Sam asked if there are any more Fino casks at the distillery, by the way.
There are some, and I know where Sam's looking to bottle some of them under his Impex Cask Evolution range that we work with them on. So Sam's always sniffing out more rare exclusive casks. So I think we do have a few potentially, but as I say that, actually, I think, do you know what? I think we actually don't. I think we bottled all of the Fino casks in this bottling, and we don't have any more in the warehouse. So we will refill them, but it'll be 8 or 10 years before you see a Fino matured Kilchoman again, probably.
Now, I'm interested in those tequila and mezcal casks because I know Drammer's Club in New York, Charlie Prince, he's been picking up some really interesting barrels for the club, and one of his favorites is a tequila cask matured whiskey.
Yeah, it works very well. Much better than I would have expected. My father bought these because the regulations kind of opened up a bit and we could start using them. And I was dubious. I didn't really think that it would work. But I tasted the casks after 3 months of finishing. So we filled some with new make, and we filled only 3 barrels of each, the tequila and the mezcal for finishing. And I tasted both 3 months in, and I was really impressed with the tequila. Lots and lots of like red chili influence, which you don't get in Scotch whiskey. You know, you have these typical kind of flavor profiles, which brands move around within, and you have really good ones and you have not so good ones. But to me, when I tasted the tequila finished Kilchoman, it was something entirely new. So I'm quite excited about that.
And now, James, I want to move on to the last, but certainly not least dram of the afternoon for me, evening for you. This year's Cask Strength edition. For those of you who've been looking, this bottle I keep holding up is the 2017 Kilchoman Tour Cask Strength Machir Bay, which, as of now, still stands as my favorite Kilchoman to date. So I'm really curious to see how the Xmas holds up.
Yeah, so the background on this is basically we've done these tours for the last probably like maybe 6 years. We started off doing them in Europe. I remember the first one, me and my brother Peter decided that, why don't we just pack up the Kilchoman Land Rover and drive through Europe on a promotional tour. We'll tie it all together. We'll create this bottling for it. And it was really, really successful. We visited about, I think it was 10 or 12 countries over about a 6-week period. So 6 weeks, me and my brother in a Land Rover driving through Europe. It was great. Very tiring. We had an event, 2 events every day for 6 weeks straight. So we were exhausted by the end. But for that bottling, we created a cask strength version of Machir Bay, and we've done these tours ever since. And we've always created this cask strength version of Machir Bay for it. And it works extremely well. Instead of reducing the cask down from late 50s ABV to 46% ABV, we just leave it at that natural cask strength. It completely changes the whiskey. You have all of that real, top note, citrus, tropical fruit, sweetness coming through, and the peat smoke is kind of peat smoke rather than earthy and maritime. It's this kind of more fragrant, more fresh peaty style. So it works extremely well. And
I'm very excited to compare them.
Yeah.
That's
people,
guys.
People seem to be more impressed with the recent bottling.
This is one of 840 bottles ever made. So there's only, probably about 800 left. Well, I have 2, so I don't know how many are open, but this is one of 2 that were left in the world, probably unopened. Color is actually quite the same. I would expect the newer one to be a little bit darker, but it's pretty much the same. No, it's ever so slightly darker, but it could be, there's still some water in the glass maybe, so. Good thing it's my bottle, right?
Yeah, I mean the color isn't always a clear indicator. You know,
No,
anyone
it's not.
who's tasted or seen a bottle of Sané over the last year would have seen it go from light to very dark, back to light, back to very dark. So you get a lot of variation with cask.
Ooh, this is really bready. The 2020s. So, guys, let me move these out of the way so you guys can see better. There we go. So this glass is the 2020. This glass is the 2017. So we're clear. Your right, 2020. Your left, 2017. There's still that, really interesting, meaty kind of raw distillate kind of smoke to it on the 2020. But it's something I've been noticing, in the whole range of Kilchoman today, which is something that's new for me in the Kilchomans, is that, more raw, more meaty, more, that kind of meaty, again, going back to mezcal, that kind of mezcal-like smoke, but not the same. Whereas on the 17, this is much more mellow, much more fruit, a lot less of that smoke. I'm sorry, by the way, James, that you can't join me on the 2017 bottle.
No problem. I'll dig one out of the cellars at some point. Reminisce. So, what was your preference?
I don't know yet. I'm still tasting the 2020. But I haven't, I honest to God, I haven't touched the 2017 since 2017. I've been saving it for the right moment to open it.
Yeah.
And I think this is a pretty good moment.
No, it's a style that, I mean, we released actually a lot of cask strength whiskey. My father comes from an independent bottling background, so we released a lot of single casks. We're always, wanting to release whiskey at higher ABVs because we feel you get something just a lot more dynamic in the glass. It packs a bit more punch. It's got a sort of clearer. Whenever I taste cask strength whiskey, it's like everything's crystallized, Whereas when it's reduced, it can get a bit murky in terms of identifying flavors and where they maybe come from in the process. Whereas when it's this
is tough.
It's very clear.
This is a very tough one. The 2017 is showing that smoky, meaty characteristic, that, more raw smoke, more like, meaty smoke. I hate to keep using the word meaty. I gotta find a synonym for meaty.
Savory.
Savory.
Savory doesn't quite do it, though, because savory could be like.
It's like the 2020 is so oily and viscous. It's creamy. It's full-bodied. The 2017 is a little lighter, actually, oddly enough, considering 2020 is clocking in at 58.6. This is clocking in an even 60. I think I would like to see a combination of the two. Because I can't pick one. So if it had the, more mellow, more, like hidden notes, I like the fact that the 2017 takes a little more work to get flavor out of. But the 2020's got a lot more of that rich viscosity. They're both fan-fucking-tastic, don't get me wrong, and I love Kilchoman, and I'm really glad to have been able to sit down with you today. And also, I don't know if I ever mentioned it to you in our email conversations. I've been doing 30 days of whiskey tasting videos on my YouTube channel, which was where this will be premiering. Actually, it's live there right now, and it'll be, you will be able to watch it again tomorrow. And November is 30 days of neat whiskey tasting. And then in December, we're doing cocktails. And November 30th, I am ending with the Kilchoman Machir Bay. I even say in the video, I am really excited to finish off this part of it with my favorite Isla whiskeys.
Nice. Great.
Well, James, it's just about 11 o'clock for you, so I'm sure you want to get to bed, so I'll let you go. Thank you so much for your time, sir. We appreciate it. Thank you all for tuning in. Stay tuned for our guest next week. It's going to be a good one. Cheers.
Thanks very much. See ya.